to Catching Up with Casey. We are in episode 2 of our podcast series, Behind the Scenes of Collaborative Studies. Today, we're going to be thinking all about 4 strategies to mastering face-to-face sessions in a collaborative study. But before we dig into that, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and what I believe in. I believe in collaborative learning communities in which the vast majority of educators are eager and inspired to come to work, feel safe and valued while at work, and end each day with a great sense of fulfillment. Who does not want to have that as part of their work environment every single day? Count me in for sure. When we think about this collaborative culture, we've been investigating collaborative studies, which are basically strategically organized opportunities for meaningful collaboration. If you are not familiar with collaborative studies and what I am sharing about right now, you're going to want to go to my website, catchingupwithcasey.com/collaboration culture. This is where you're going to learn all about what are collaborative studies, why do we need them, and how we can implement them successfully. Last week, my first episode was all about how to plan a collaborative study. And this week, it's all about face-to-face sessions, which is the nitty-gritty of it all. It's really the meat of where collaborative study begins. So let me take you through what this episode is going to look like and sound like. We're going to be thinking about culture of collaboration and what it means. We're going to dig through the etymology a little bit and then think about why you need to build it. And finally, I'm going to take you to those practical steps of implementing face-to-face sessions, which is just one piece of a collaborative study. So let's investigate that term collaboration. Oftentimes when we think of the word collaboration, we bring to mind this picture of people in a meeting together, people who are sitting side by side working. And a lot of the times when we say that we're going to have a meeting, we say we're going to collaborate. However, that's not always the case. Just because you have people who are grouped together working on something does not mean that true collaboration is happening. And I want to show you why that's the case. To do so, we're going to use the definition from Marilyn Friend and Lynn Cook about interpersonal collaboration. This is what they state. Interpersonal collaboration is a style for direct interaction between at least 2 co-equal parties voluntarily engaged in shared decision-making as they work toward a common goal. Okay, so let's really uncover 4 different pieces of this definition. The first piece of this definition is interpersonal, which insinuates that on some level, we have to be able to implement interpersonal skills to be able to collaborate. The second is co-equal, meaning we're coming to this collaboration session or this collaborative meeting as co-equal parties. We're coming at the same level regardless of our rank, regardless of our status, regardless of our title. The third, which is really important, this is key here, voluntarily engaged. So in order for collaboration truly to be taking place, the people who are coming to this collaborative work are doing so voluntarily. And we're going to talk more about that later in the episode, but highlight that in your mind, it's only really collaborative if people are voluntarily involved. And then finally, fourth, let's take a look at the very last piece of this definition. This says as they work toward a common goal. So we will notice collaboration only if interpersonal skills are at play, people are co-equally invested in the work, people are voluntarily engaged in the work, and they're working toward a common goal that they've set together. So we know what collaboration is now. Let's investigate culture. Culture, very simply, is the beliefs, behaviors, and values of a group of people. And if we are collaborating, then we know there's more than one party at hand. But here's what's interesting about this. Your beliefs shape your values, and these both inform your behaviors. So if we have a belief, and if our people have a belief that collaboration is imperative in reaching that common goal that's in that definition, then we value strong and meaningful collaboration. And if this is the case, then we will make decisions and carry out behaviors that make collaboration successful. Okay, now we've talked all about this term, culture of collaboration. We know what collaboration is, we know what culture is, so let's think about why it is we have to build that collaboration. Because remember, in the last episode, I told you it does not exist on its own. It has to be fostered, it has to be taught both indirectly and directly, and it has to strategically be encouraged. We have to build a culture of collaboration because it fosters collective efficacy. Now, that's one of those terms that you hear again and again. It's like that educational jargon that keeps coming up repetitively. And for most people, you're thinking, yeah, I kind of get what collective efficacy is. But again, it's jargon. What do we even mean by it? We're kind of throwing it around, but how many people in schools are actually working toward and thinking about how you attain collective efficacy? Remember, I told you in the last section of this episode that one of the key terms in the definition was voluntary for collaboration. So in other words, if it's not voluntary, if they're not coming to it on a voluntary level, then collaboration really isn't happening. Here's what's interesting. In order for you to build collective efficacy, people need to volunteer to collaborate with one another. They have to come to it voluntarily. Here's why. They're asking that question in their mind, do I believe enough in this cause to volunteer? Or is this not a cause that I'm interested in pursuing with others? So how are you going to build collective efficacy? How are you going to build a culture of collaboration? The second reason you have to build a culture of collaboration is because those who collaborate trust one another. And I want you to think about this as almost like a growing spiral. We're starting with just a little bit of trust, and that's all you need is just a little bit. When people who collaborate together have that little bit of trust, and then they begin to collaborate just a little bit, that trust grows. With more trust comes more collaboration. With more collaboration comes more trust, and it continues to grow. And then finally, because of that trust, and here's the third reason you need to build a culture of collaboration, because those who trust one another can have crucial conversations. You know, those hard conversations that not many people in schools want to have because we don't trust one another. But if you've built a culture of collaboration, then those conversations can take place, and they have to take place if we are going to impact the teachers in our schools and if we are going to impact students. It's simple to state that we need to build a culture of collaboration. It's even somewhat easy to say why we need to build a culture of collaboration, but it's so much more challenging to actually instill a culture of collaboration and put into place some actionable steps to reach that culture. But today, I want to tell you about 4 strategies to mastering face-to-face sessions, which is going to be one of the key components of a collaborative study that allows you to truly build that culture of collaboration. So here are the 4 strategies. Strategy 1, set the stage. Strategy 2, start with why. Strategy 3, step aside. And strategy 4, spur them on. This is the most excited I've been about a podcast because these are powerful strategies for anyone who's leading teams. So let's dig in and start with the first strategy. Strategy 1, you are going to set the stage. Here's what you're going to be asking yourself. How do the location, the arrangement, and the materials inspire? How do they lend themselves to collaborative work? I'm going to tell you that I've been in a situation in a collaborative study where the location, the arrangement, and the materials were not ideal. So picture in your mind, we're coming to a collaborative study session. I've got maybe 5 people that are coming to this session, and I know that they're coming, and I decide, okay, well, we're just going to meet in the library. And we sit down at a couple of tables, and the air conditioner turns off at 4 o'clock. So it's 4 o'clock in this library with windows where the sun is blaring in, and we're basically sweating. It was not ideal for inspiring anyone. It was not ideal for working together. All we could think about was how hot we were and how we wanted to get out of there immediately. Not only that, the library was a massive place for just the 5 of us collaborating. And I didn't think about that going into it. I didn't think about, number one, how cold or hot is it going to be in there? Number 2, is this space too big where we feel uncomfortable? And then finally, I didn't really bring anything with me. I thought to myself, well, they're going to come and they're going to just talk and work together. And that's what we want. But I didn't even have any questions or thoughts prepared for how we were going to get started. I didn't have sticky notes or notepads or cool pens or even snacks to help inspire them to begin working. It was all wrong. And it was the worst face-to-face collaborative session that I implemented all year long. So I know in the future to avoid that. Instead, I want to set the stage. I want to think about that location. How big or how small does it need to be? I want to think about if it's going to be too cold or too hot. I want to think about the arrangement. How am I structuring this space so that the people are facing each other and I'm encouraging collaborative work where everyone is equally participating? And finally, what are some materials I need to bring? Maybe I don't need to bring pens and pencils and sticky notes, but maybe I do need to bring a snack or drinks because it's been a long day. And I want to treat them for coming, and I want them to have something that encourages their participation, that inspires them or motivates them to join in the conversation. So if you've thought about all of those things, then you're ready to meet them and greet them at the door and get started. Strategy number 2, start with why. This is what I'm most excited about. And I'm going to tell you that this is what's most important. More important than any of the other strategies is this strategy here. Start with why. If you get nothing else from this episode, take this with you, put it in your pocket, and live by it. This idea of the golden circle, where you're noticing the why, how, and what. So if you are just listening to this and you don't see the screen, there are 3 circles, almost like a target. Why is in the middle, followed by how on the middle circle, and then followed by what on the outside circle. The book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. This golden circle idea comes from his work where he tells people about how to become inspiring leaders. In the very beginning of this episode, I started with my why, because people buy your why before they ever buy your how and what. People follow someone's why before they ever follow their how and their what. So here's how Simon Sinek identifies a why, a how, and a what. Your why is your belief in something. My belief was, I believe in learning communities, collaborative learning communities, where the vast majority of educators are eager and inspired to come to work, feel safe and empowered while at work, and leave at the end of the day with a great sense of fulfillment, right? Some version of that is my why, and I hold that with me because that's going to inform my how and my what. My why is my belief. My how is the actions. What actions do I take to achieve my why? I inspire educators. I empower and foster a culture of collaboration, and I work to build collective efficacy. Then what is the result? What are the results that I'm trying to get to? What are the things that I offer? Here's what I offer. These are results-driven offerings. I offer consulting. I offer collaborative studies. I offer content where I'm working to help people see how we can build a culture of collaboration together. But none of that is near as important as my why. More practically, if you are starting with your why in a face-to-face session, in a collaborative study, your why could be your belief or your value. but it also could be the belief or value of the people coming together. So you can set that why with them, but you might also need to provide some examples. So my first collaborative study is all about classroom management strategies. So I've written down some ideas for my why, my how, and my what. And I'm thinking about starting these collaborative studies with people knowing already what the why is behind this whole collaborative study, right? Because that's what I want them to latch onto. This is the why. I could start with what, and this is what that would sound like. We're going to have a collaborative study over classroom management strategies because we want to be sure that our kids, know what to do in the classrooms, and so we don't have any behavior problems, and so it's a little bit easier for you as the teacher to implement your lessons without lots of interruptions. And and we want kids to feel, safe. We want to build community and relationships in our classrooms. That's if I'm starting with what, but let me show you what it sounds like if we start with why, and notice the difference. We believe that every child and every teacher deserves to thrive, to feel safe, and feel valued as a person and a learner in every classroom every day. We want to take time to encourage students and hold them accountable, to encourage teachers and hold them accountable. We want to take a step back and reflect on that. So we're going to do a collaborative study together where we take time to just think about these things and investigate some classroom management strategies and PBIS strategies. It's a huge difference when you're starting with why. People know, that's what I value too. I want to feel safe and encouraged, and I want to feel valued in the classroom. So do my students. I want to join in on this, and I want to volunteer because I believe in that too. When you share your why, people latch onto it and will follow that regardless of what is to come, regardless of whether it's high effort or low effort. Strategy number 3, step aside. We have to decide in these face-to-face sessions how we're going to step aside and how we're going to listen and how we're going to observe, okay? Because observing is a crucial part of listening closely. We are natural people watchers, right? So when we're at Walmart or the water park or any other number of places, we naturally people watch. But we only do so out of curiosity. When we're people watching, we have no desire to take next steps, right? There's no real purpose to take next steps. But one of the best ways to be a multiplier is to step aside and just observe. Be an active listener, be an intentional watcher, and take next steps strategically. We want to be a multiplier instead of a diminisher. If you have not read the book, The Multiplier Effect, this information comes from Liz Wiseman, the author of this book. It's a fantastic read, and she takes on the assumption that people are smart and will figure it out. That's the assumption of a multiplier. So as a multiplier, we want to take a look at our people and think about their native genius and then decide what kind of disciplines can I take on as a multiplier? Do I want to be a talent finder within this group? Do I want to be a liberator? Do I want to be a challenger? Do I want to be a community builder? Or do I want to be an investor? In the future, we're going to take a deeper look into each of these 5 disciplines of a multiplier. But you will want to take note of the people around you in your face-to-face sessions. Observe them and try to decide who needs what from me to become a leader of our community of learners. Who needs this discipline from me in order to thrive? And how can I multiply that in them? Finally, strategy 4. You are going to spur them on. You've come to the end of your face-to-face session. Now it's time to generate belief in what is possible. Again, this comes from the Multiplier Effect book by Liz Wiseman, Lois Allen, and Elise Foster. And here's what I want you to be thinking about. How are you going to spur them on in this work? Is it going to be a question that you ask? Is it going to be a challenge that you provide to them? Are you going to simply encourage them as they leave the room? How are you going to hold them accountable to that work? You want to transfer ownership of this completely to these teachers or these educators, and you want to keep it there. You do not want to take it back. You do not want them to revert to their same values and beliefs before. We want them to hold on to the values and beliefs that you stated when you said, let's start with why. And then you want to spur them on and hold them accountable. Be a multiplier. When you're holding them accountable, you've given that challenge at the end of your face-to-face session and you've said, let's check in again. And you give them a time and a place. And then before that time and place, you're going directly to them. You're giving them a call, you're sending an email, a text, and you're saying, tell me about how this is going. And in that way, you're holding them accountable. You're not taking it on for them. They have full ownership. How are you going to spur them on and keep generating the belief in what is possible? These are the 4 strategies to mastering those face-to-face sessions and building that culture of collaboration. Set the stage. Start with why. Step aside and give them that ownership. And finally, keep that ownership in their hands by spurring them on and holding them accountable. I've given you a lot to think about in face-to-face sessions. Some of these ideas we can dig so much deeper. For now, I want you to be sure that the strategy you're holding on to most is strategy 2, starting with why. Hold it in your pocket and always start with why. Then let's talk about what's next. Next, we're going to go behind the scenes of collaborative studies and try to decide how we might use choice boards in order to hold your teachers accountable. How can you use choice boards to give them number 1 choice, to give them ownership, and then to hold them accountable? I can't wait to catch up with you next time. Until then, you can catch up with me on my website, catchingupwithcasey.com, or on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Until then, I'll catch you on the flippity flip.